What's up guys, Onmaths here, and today we're looking at quadratics. So quadratics is something that there's quite a lot of different questions on, and it also incorporates itself into so many other topics. So we're going to just look at questions with the basics of quadratics, and the questions go all the way up to grade 9. So we've got a nice range of questions here. But it's really important that you understand this topic as much as you can. So let's get started. So the first one says solve by factorization. Now, paper 4 on OCR is a calculator paper, so you have a calculator available, but it's clearly telling you in the question you must do it by factorization. So if you use the formula or anything else, then you're not going to get the marks for this. So there's loads of different ways of doing this. We're going to end up with finding out what the two brackets are and then solving them. But the method I'm kind of favouring at the moment is the one where we multiply these two together and we work out what that is. So 2 times the negative 12. So 2 times minus 12 is minus 24. Okay. And then what we do is we write down all the factors of minus 24. Okay. So it'd be 1 and minus 24. 2 and minus 12, 3 and minus 8, 4 and minus 6, 5 doesn't work, and 6 just brings us back to 4. But then we've got the negative versions of each of these, like with the first one being negative. So it takes a little bit of time, but by doing it like this, you know you haven't missed any out. Okay, the next thing we do is we work out which of these add together to make that plus 5 there. So we're just going to add all of these. Now, we don't need to add all of them. We can just look down the list and see which one will roughly get us there and then just check. So I think that 8 take away 3 or minus 3 plus 8 is 5. So it's going to be this pair here. So this is the pair we're going to use. And 3 and minus 8 bring us to minus 5. Now it has to be plus 5. Okay, that's probably the most difficult part of this, because all we do now is we rewrite the quadratic here, but instead of that plus 5x, we break that plus 5x into minus 3x plus 8x. So I'm just going to copy the same question, but instead of that plus 5x, I'm going to say minus 3x plus 8x. And then we've got minus 12 at the end there. Okay. I always find it easier to put the negative first. If you've got a choice, if they're not both negative, it's sometimes easier to put the negative first. So I'd always put the minus 3x first. Okay, with this next step, what we're going to do is we're going to look at factorizing this and this separately. Okay. Whoops. Yeah, let's do a different color as well. Let's pick kind of black, why not? So we're going to factorize these two things separately. Okay, and we're going to do a linear factorization. So 2x squared minus 3x, well the only thing I can factorize with that is x. So we're just going to have x brackets 2x minus 3. And then we've got 8x minus 12x. So it's going to be plus, and it's going to be, what is it, 4? So 4 goes into both of those. So it would be 2x minus 3 equals 0. Okay, now this is the clever bit. To get our new set of, set of brackets, okay, one of the brackets will be made up of the letters and numbers on the outside. So those two there. So those will make up our first set of brackets. And the second bracket will be made up of the repeated bracket. And you'll always get a repeated bracket if you've done it right. Perfect. How easy is that? Okay. And to get the answers, to solve it, one of these brackets has to be equal to 0. So we get this one, and we get it equal to 0. Get our lines down and do all of that business. So we're going to take away 4 from both sides, and we've got x equals minus 4. And then we get this one equal to 0. Get our lines in. So we get plus 3 both sides. So you've got 2x equals 3. And then divide by 2 both sides. So we've got x equals 3 over 2, which is what, 1.5. So you've got x equals minus 4 or 1.5. Now I've done that really quickly. We've got much bigger videos on how to factorize quadratics when the coefficient of the x squared is not 1 on our website. So just check out the website if you need a bit more explanation on that. Okay, now this next one says solve it. Doesn't say anything about factorizing now, and we do have a calculator, and the kind of hint in the question is the fact that it asks it correct to 2 decimal places. Whenever a question asks that, it's going to need to be not with factorization, almost certainly. Or I've never seen a question that required you to factorize or that could factorize that has said, round it to whatever, 2 decimal places, whatever. So we're going to have to find a different method for this. And as you might know already, there's a formula for working out what the solutions to x will be when they're written as a quadratic. It's called the quadratic formula. So a few things you need to know. For the quadratic formula, you need 3 values. You need a, you need b, and you need c. So a is the coefficient of the x squared. It just basically means the number before the x squared, which is 3. B is the number before the x, and make sure you get the sign as well. So it's a positive 2. And c is the number left on its own, sort of the number that's not a coefficient of x or x squared, which in this case would be minus 3. Then you just write down the formula, and this is one you need to just know. So it's x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of that over 2a. Okay. Now, what I used to ask my students to do is work it out work it out in stages, really, without a calculator. But I've kind of changed my mind on that. We just use a calculator for working this out, but we need to know how to substitute the stuff in. So we're going to start off with minus b, so minus 2 plus minus square root of b squared, so that's 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 3, times c. Now, whenever you've got a negative, always put it into brackets when you're substituting it into a formula. It just guarantees you won't make a mistake, and there's so many easy mistakes to make with this. Okay, so always, when you're substituting in a negative number, always put it into brackets. Okay, so what I'm going to do is get my calculator, and what I'm going to type first of all is the fraction button. Okay, so type the fraction button first. Then I'm going to use the negative button. That's not the same as the minus button. It should be a minus sign with brackets around it on the calculator. Minus 2. Now we've got to make a choice here. We've either got to go plus or negative. I'm going to go plus first. Then the square root button. Then 2 squared minus 4 times 3 times, and then open the bracket, and then negative button 3, close bracket. Then I'm going to click down on my calculator to go to the bottom, the denominator of the fraction, and just write 2 times 3. Now that will give me it in surd form, but I don't want it in surd form, so I press the S to D button on the Casio calculator. It might be a different button on your calculator, and it will convert it to a decimal. So I'm going to say equals, and I'm just going to write down the whole thing, so that when I'm checking my work later on, I can see whether I've done it correctly. So we've got one solution. Now, I don't want to have to write all of that stuff on the calculator again. So what you can do is use the cursor buttons, the ones at the top, the up, down, left, right buttons, and go to where it has the plus, delete it, and just swap it for a takeaway, and then press equals. Again, it puts it in surd form, so I'm just going to press S to D, and it has minus 1.387425887. The last thing I've got to do is just round those to 2 decimal places. So I'm just going to show where the 2 decimal places are. So it'll be there and there. That would be my cutoff. Now the next numbers are 0 for the first one. So it's just 0.72. Now on the second one, the next number is a 7, so that 8 will go up to a 9. So it'll be minus 1.39. Next we move on to our AQA question, and this is very similar to the last OCR one we did, because we've got that round to 2 decimal places thing in the question. So we know we're going to use the quadratic formula, but you can't use the quadratic formula on a quadratic unless you have it equal to 0. So the first thing we need to do with this question is get it equal to 0. And I'm just going to put my lines down. And we're going to first of all take away the 10x from both sides. And so we've got 5x squared minus 10x equals 4. And then obviously we're going to take away the 4 from both sides. Now you might ask, why didn't I just take away the 5x squared from both sides? You could have done that. I just really don't like the coefficient of the x squared being negative. For me, I always make the x squared positive, always make the coefficient of the x squared positive, no matter what. There are situations that you can get into problems if you do that. So I'd always make it positive. So we've got to find a, b and c again. So a is the coefficient of the x squared, so that's number before the x squared, which is 5. B is the coefficient of the x. Now we've got to make sure we have the sign as well, so it's minus 10. And then c is the number on its own, which is minus 4. So we're going to put our quadratic, we'll go write our quadratic equation, and I'm going to do it on the right hand side just for a bit of space. So we've got x equals minus b, and I'd always write it out. Show the examiner you know it, just in case you make a mistake later on. If there's a mark for knowing the quadratic formula, then you know you're going to get it over 2a. Now this is the interesting part, because if we forget the rule that I said on the last question, we can get into real problems here. So when you are substituting in, make sure if it's a negative to put it into brackets, and you'll see why now, because we've got minus 10 plus minus square root of minus 10 squared minus 4 times a, which is 5, times minus 4 in brackets, okay, over 2 times 5. Now, the reason why students sometimes make a mistake with not putting into brackets is if you type in minus 10 squared without the brackets, it will do the 10 squared first and then make it negative. It just means your answer will be wrong. Try it now. Type in minus 10 squared and you'll get minus 100. But when you put it into brackets, minus 10 in brackets squared, you get positive 100. So just get in the habit of putting any negatives in brackets. So we've got minus brackets. So first of all, you press the fraction button, then minus brackets, minus 10, close brackets. We'll do plus again first. Square root, brackets, minus 10, close brackets squared, minus 4 times 5 times brackets minus 4. And then cursor button down, 2 times 5. Press S to D and you get 2.3416407786. Now use the cursor keys to go back to that plus and make it a takeaway. And S to D again, minus 0.3416407865. Right, it wants it to 2 decimal places, so let's have a look where the cutoff point is, there and there. And so our answer will be, let's change it back to blue, x equals 2.34 and x equals minus 0.34. Now it seems really odd that on some exams you just have answer. Now that almost implies there's one answer, but with a quadratic, unless this bit, the discriminant, is 0, or -1, you will always get, or negative, sorry, you'll always get 2 answers. If it is 0, you'll only get 1 answer. If it's negative, you won't get any answers. You'll just get, I think on most calculators, it says maths error, because you're trying to square root a negative, which you can't do. Well, with real numbers, you can't do it. So, you write down 2 answers. Even if it just says answer, write down 2 answers. On the previous one, on the OCR one, it did give us 2 spaces to fill out. On this one, it kind of makes us feel, oh, hang on, have we got this right? Should I get 2 answers? Absolutely. For a quadratic, you almost certainly will get 2 answers. Right, last up is our Edexcel question, and I've kind of moved away from quadratic formula and factorising quadratics, and we're talking now about a different part of quadratics. Now, looking at this question, it kind of looks a bit bizarre. It's saying that we've got a quadratic on the left-hand side. It's not an equation. There's no equals at all. And it's asking us to form this kind of weird kind of bracketed squared and plus b at the end. So unless you recognise this, this question will be impossible, unless you recognise what topic this is from. And the topic it's from is obviously completing the square. I say obviously. If you know anything about completing the square, you know that with completing the square, you'll end up with x plus a in a bracket squared and then some left over. And this is a really useful thing for graphic transformations, just to pluck one thing out the air, or just actually for solving quadratics. It's an alternative approach, and the quadratic formula is essentially based on completing the square. It's just a nicer way of setting it out. Anyway, to complete the square, what we do is we just focus on this bit here. That -7 we just kind of ignore. We still need to put it down because obviously it's part of the expression, but we worry about that -7 right at the end. And what we do is we have a look at the x squared and the plus 6x, and we make a bracket straight away, and what we do is we put x plus half of the 6x, okay? So half of the 6x is, the coefficient of the x is 3. Close that bracket, and we put a squared. How easy is that? Now, I'm going to leave that there with the minus, I'm just going to pause that. And what we're going to do down here is we're just going to expand it and see what we get. So that just means times by itself. And so we can use the grid method, you can use FOIL, you can use smiles and rainbows, whatever method you want. But when you expand that, you get this. Okay, now this bit here is perfect. That's what we want. That's what we had in the question. So we want to leave that in. In fact, let's underline it. So we want to leave that. That's good. That's what we wanted. But we have this horrible +9 that it creates. It creates a +9. Now we can't just leave it at that. It's just generated a 9 and we don't want that 9. So what we do is we take away that 9. We just get rid of it. So we've created it with the brackets and we undo it. We get rid of that 9 and that just leaves the x squared plus 6 bit. We also need to copy down that -7 because that is part of the expression. Then what we do is simply add those together. So -9 take away 7 is going to be -16. Now I've made that look really simple and hopefully it is, but we've got much longer videos on how to complete the square. We've got ones that the coefficient of x squared is not 1, that makes it much more complicated. Then we've got application stuff. So there's loads of videos on this on our website. So if you are not at all sure what the heck I'm talking about, check out our website and look up completing the square for more questions. But that's going to do it there for today. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please click like. If you want to see more from us, release videos every single weekday at 9 o'clock. Just click the subscribe button and the bell icon to make sure you're up to date with all the videos we release. If you want to see even more from us, we've got a website, onmaths.com, and there'll be a magic link that appears above this video now. The website's full of completely free resources to help you with your maths going forward. Thank you very much, and I'll see you tomorrow.